Okay.
Oh, so the the microphone should be about 4 inches from your mouth. So, like.
Facebook is ready when you're ready.
Okay. Okay. So are you ready? And you don't
Ready
want
as I'm
water or
get.
anything, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to turn off my cell phone. So we want to turn your ringer off.
Mhm.
And actually, you should probably not have your cell phone on this here table. So yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, so we're ready. I think
Is your timer set to 59:59?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, so step one is for you to flip the silver switch that turns on the
Yep.
light and the timer.
Right? It's on.
Put the clapper in front of your face. When you hit the clapper, you're on the air.
Thanks. Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded here at Think Twice Radio in the home of the future. Thanks to our friend and producer, Richard Wicca. Thanks, Richard. And we're also very thankful to our friends at WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative radio station. That's 91.3 FM. Thank you very much, Buff State. And in thinking of thankfulness, we also think of our indigenous friends who start every gathering and meeting off by remembering the people who have come together and the love that brings us together, that they remembering Mother Earth and all of the plants that are so vital to our existence, the medicinal plants, the nutritional plants, and the trees that provide the very air we breathe, and the swimming four-legged and flying creatures that are all here, and there's so many elements, the thunder beings and the grandmother moon and brother sun and all the different elements in the creation, and the instructions that we've been given by the Creator, that if we are following those instructions, life will continue on in this creation. So we think of them. We also think of the fact that we are on stolen Haudenosaunee land, right here on stolen Seneca land. So with that, as all of the reminders and thankfulness, we are also going to have a special couple of shows today. This first one is going to be on community needs, and we have a very special community person. Well, first I will introduce, and I'm Vicki Ross. I'm the chair or co-chair of the board at the Western New York Peace Center. And we have here our special guest, former board member and actually founder and executive director of Bury the Violence, our friend and shero, Kareema Morris. Welcome, Kareema.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so grateful to you always. Not just for your 3 years of being a board member for the Western New York Peace Center, but also there's so much work that you do in the community of all kinds. And you really, truly have your finger on the pulse of what's needed in the community, what's going on. You work in the schools and you work in the community. And I want to say, night and day, it's a lot. It's a lot on you. But we're grateful for the work that you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for acknowledging it. And it is honorable for me to be acknowledged in the community for what I do. So thank you.
Well, we'll be talking really in depth about what you do. But actually, for right now, we're going to talk more in depth about community needs. Because the community, and I'm going to say especially the Black community, has needed so much for so long, and other elements of the community, and we have just had that brought home to us in a way like never before. like never before. And the eyes of the nation have been on Buffalo more and more. And so I think that this is a good opportunity to talk and look at our community and the things that we need. So, for example, one of the things we wanted to talk about for community needs is nutritional needs. So in the Black community, in fact, just today when I was talking with Deidre, our executive director, Deidre Email, she said, well, the fact that it's a food desert on the east side, she said, that's nothing new.
No.
That's not been new. Mm-hmm. The fact that people had to fight tooth and nail
to get a clean store.
And to get Tops even in there was to get any fresh food coming in was huge. When did Tops come in? Was it in
about over 20 years now?
Right. So it was, well, in our last century, right? That finally Tops came in. But that's one store for some, I think, I mean, certainly it's thousands upon thousands of people.
But it's 2 or 3 zip codes connected to that store.
Right.
One store. And it's absurd because you have to literally go from the east side to the west side, which changes the store's dynamics culturally.
Right.
So you don't have the same food.
Right. And
we don't have the same, we don't eat the same things. When it comes to certain things. So it's a different, it's a different cultural setup to the stores and the communities in which they're placed. So then you would have, going back up Main Street or South Buffalo, it's just the scarcity to have one store when you can go in North Buffalo and you have 2 or 3 within blocks of each other.
Right. The
co-op, Dashes.
Right, 4 actually. Tops is there, Wegmans is there, the Lexington Co-op is there, and Dashes is all there, up there in North Buffalo.
Right.
Also in the Elmwood Village, I mean, that's easy, access to North Buffalo. So you could almost say they're sort of in between.
Well, they also have Price Right in the Elmwood
and there's Price
Village.
Right, yeah, and there's Lexington Co-op as well. So that's a lot. So there's a lot. There's choices there. There's also a Tops down the Lower West Side.
Right.
That's down over by the Lower West Side, over near the Bell Center. Right.
So they're left to cover downtown, East Side, and what. It's just crazy. There's one new
grocery store downtown. So
that's not at capacity to even say it's really a grocery store.
Okay, it's more just a little stopgap.
Braymeyer's, is it?
Right, something like that.
It's not a selection for us as a community, first of all.
Right.
Braymeyer's, maybe it is. I can't recall the name specific, but they have a different selection. And it's limited access. The parking, it's not easily accessible.
That's another thing. Right.
Yeah, store, so it's not even really an option in comparison.
So I want to say, when we say, oh, well, the government can't force a business to do anything. Well, no, but the government has persuaded business or made it advantageous for business to do all kinds of things. So there's been tax breaks that are given. There's advantages that can be given. There's land. There's city land.
Well, if people had access to purchase the land that they've been requested in these lots and not caught up in monopolies, then maybe it would be something more doable. When your hand is forced, what can you do?
If the political will was there to get more grocery stores in the neighborhood, and in, that 2 zip code area.
14208, 14209.
And isn't it what about 15 or 14? No?
No, not 15. 15 is University District, which is University Plaza with the Tops.
But But
and then the other end of 14215 is you would have to go to Cheektowaga, but so it's typically just that Tops in the University Plaza. But we have a makeshift supermarket on Kensington and Bailey, and we have meat markets in the University District. Or the Lovejoy border. So we have more options.
But not what's needed. Not what's needed.
It could be better. It could be better.
A lot better.
Right. But they have other stores in the community like Price Choppers and things like that. Those things are other options in which they have basic bodegas over in the 14208 and 14209. Now, like, you can go into a meat market, a produce store. They don't have that.
Right. So we don't have. So I want to give a shout out to the African
American Co-op.
American Food Co-op. Isn't it African Heritage Food Co-op?
That sounds
right. African Heritage Food Co-op, and Alex Wright,
correct,
who has been leading that charge of trying to really, provide the food, and fresh produce, fresh fruit. We know fruit and vegetables are a key element in the diet. I'm going to say for myself, I mean, they're a very key element in my diet. That's all I have, plus dairy. I do a lot of dairy. But also, I mean, you can get from dairy, or meat, or nuts and, peanut butter and, etc. Nuts, and also legumes or beans, any kind of, lentils.
Proteins.
Those are the proteins. So we need those, but we also need fresh fruit and vegetables, very much so. Very, very much so. And so if those are not available to people, the health is going to suffer. People's health is not going to be good. So, and especially then, what we don't have. We know what we don't have.
Right.
So we don't have all that produce available everywhere it needs to be. But we do have corner grocery stores and fast food.
Exactly. And then you look at the health.
Right. And
then you pinpoint our culture and say that this causes this disease and this illness and this ailment, but it's what's readily available.
Right.
And so I think beyond the food desert, I think like it's a trap.
Right.
Because there's people who can't be mobile or have a way around. Some people don't even leave without of that area. You have people who've not even been to Delaware Park before and they live in the same city. It's not like Niagara Falls. So with that being said, they use what's available and make it work. That's one thing that as black people we do. We make do with what we have.
It really touched my heart when somebody just said the other day, people are used to it, and so people feel like you have to live this way, like it's normal. Now, I want to say, it's not normal to not have fresh food available. So the farmer's market, now there was a farmer's market across from ECMC.
That's totally out of the area where this store is. So that's 14211.
Right.
So it's still attributing to the fact that a lack of what's available.
So it just shows how much is not there.
Right.
So one of the other things I want to say that as we're talking about community needs, so one of the things would be, more grocery stores that are fully equipped with all the different things that people want to eat. And the healthy choices as well.
Well, we need varieties.
Right.
We need a produce store. We need meat markets. Tops. It's good for variety, but specifically me working in that neighborhood, going to lunch and getting a fruit cup, it wasn't really a thing. Me being able to look and find a good chopped salad or something where I can even go to Aldi's. Like, they don't even have Aldi's over there. University District does have Aldi's and Tops alternatives. Yes, and again, that's connected to North Buffalo still.
Back to that.
Right.
Right.
And so you look at the plethora here In the desert here, it's no balance. It's no healthy choices. It's no healthy options. And even though this is a major grocery store chain, the lack of what was available there is just disgusting.
Well, and I do want to mention this. I know some people are very eager for that Tops to reopen. And some people are also saying, are you kidding me?
I think it's disrespectful.
Right.
To have endured what happened and then have to just go back to business as usual and as normal in their face of it, because honestly the people who are pushing this aren't given other options. So it's, again, make do with what you have.
Right.
And those people don't have to suffer the consequences of going back in there on a bloodshed store and then possibly, so if it takes 6 or 7 hours to do a homicide scene, honestly, thoroughly to clean that store and to dishelf and to get rid of the stuff, how long should that take? This is also way too fast. It's not even 30 good days of cleaning.
And how are people expected to go into that store and feel all right? I mean, and how are they expected to?
They're not they should not be expected to do that, because it's another level of trauma.
Right. So that's
it's like we live on a military base, and this is our only option. It's like we are on a different planet, and this is all we have, and it's crippling to a community.
Right.
It's like, this is what we're giving you, and you got to take it, and it's not okay.
There's other ways of handling it. So, and there have been, now, I know that there was a poll being taken of people's thoughts about it, but I've heard plenty of people talking.
Well, where's that poll and who's available to, and are they going door to door?
Betty Jean Grant has been taking a poll, so I think that's a start.
Is it canvassing?
It should be canvassing. I think it's probably...
I never heard of it. I work in the neighborhood.
On Facebook. I've seen it on Facebook. So, but anyway, so the feelings of the community need to be taken into account, and back to the political will. So there's money right now. We know that there's been money. There's money from the COVID. There's money that's
We've heard that there's money.
We've heard that there's money, right, as you're saying. So that money, and if we have if we have some money and we have a political will, because there are things that can be done, especially because they're done all the time, to, for development projects of different kinds in other areas of the city.
Okay.
Yeah, they get their money, they get their tax breaks, they get their advantages, because otherwise these millionaires and billionaires, or whatever, if I don't know if they're millionaires or billionaires, but they're way up there, these real estate tycoons, that they get their tax breaks. So why don't we have tax breaks for new grocery stores in other areas? So anyway, we've been talking about the nutrition. So I want to say, because it came up as we're talking about it, transportation. So transportation needs are very intense in Buffalo, and we know they are, because a third of the community does not have a car.
Well, we need to back up to the mere fact that the trauma that was ensued on that community, there's people who don't even want to come outside. There's people who don't want to even walk down two tops.
Right.
There's people who have survivor's guilt. There's different levels of what's happening, and we're still shoving the store back in their face like that's the resolve. That's the furthest from the resolve.
Right.
We haven't even scratched the surface yet, but we're looking at opening the store.
Right. So that it needs to be discussed, and it needs political will back to that. And people need to get in touch with the mayor's office, call 311, or with other our council persons. If you go to WNYPC.org, Organizing in Western New York, the tab Organizing in Western New York, you'll see all of the council persons' contact information, and let them know what you want. And so that's what we have to do, is let them know what we want and what we need. And I say we, the people who are most heavily impacted.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much choice we really have, because the design of what happened and the repair, like, this should be opportunity for other things to, like, makeshift trailer parked on those lawns and those, Riley and Jefferson, since I was a kid, has been an empty space, right? That lot has been vacant.
Right.
We used to have tent revivals there.
Right.
So I'm in my 40s.
Right.
Okay, so that's 30-something years. And so it should be a trailer there, semi-permanent, with meats, fresh meats, and things like that, where people can get what they need until, right?
Something else.
Until something else
is arranged, is encouraged.
But then they have tops at the Resource Council on Ferry parked up there. But how are people that don't want to leave their house getting food?
Right. Well, I'm thinking about some of the mutual aid arrangements as at least that's something that could be a partial solution, but it's not a full solution. And so one of the things, so I guess this sort of brings us to the counseling needs and the healing needs. And in fact, there's a lot that needs to be done in that area. Is that people, first of all, one of the things that I often think is that most people have an alert system disorder, and certainly, I'm going to say, for black people who have had centuries of, first enslavement and then just racism, white supremacy. There's really apartheid, a second-class citizen, different treatment for black people. And other elements in the set. I mean, definitely indigenous people have suffered, in the same kinds of way, in some different ways and some the same ways, but certainly as much, tremendously. And brown people,
as progressive as we are in politics, in education, why are we still having these same setbacks? It's like, no matter how much achievement has been made in this community amongst the people that live there, they're being disregarded.
Well, people need healing opportunities that are culturally appropriate and wanted.
Effective.
Yeah, and effective. And counseling is often not it. I know that, because people don't want to go. It doesn't seem right, and especially because a lot of us social workers, there are black social workers, and hallelujah that there are, but there's not nearly enough. And so those people, I'll mention Cheney Brockington, who just opened her own private practice, who is a very wonderful, very knowledgeable, and very effective, and very much, a lot of times it's going to need to be a person who looks like you.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise we don't know. I don't know. I know some things about trauma in general, and I know some things about broken alert systems, which are very pervasive, but I'm just saying there's just even more onslaught, even more damage done for lots of people, for people of color, and so for those people there needs to be, healing opportunities. And I want to say, the mental health, we can call it mental health. We can call it more, it's not about what's wrong with you, it's about what's happened to you, right? That's what it's, and plain and simple. So there's no stigma, there's no, pathology. I mean, heaven forbid, no. It's been onslaught of abuse, neglect, and just shame and just, post-traumatic slave disorder is sometimes called. But whatever you want to call it, it is about, the alert system is always on because the onslaught is always happening. And so people need opportunities. And actually, Deidre and I were just working on some opportunities for healing that could be coming along, you know, in the not too distant future. And it will be, you know, after the circus or after the cameras are gone, you know, after, you know.
We have to start implementing those things now so we can get people's information. So,
right.
Holding the restorative circles and candid conversations that we do. If you don't have the people, you're talking to yourself, right?
Right. Well, that's the other thing. It's to do it in a way that people
embrace it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Which is not just any old way.
No,
you know?
It's not.
Yeah, it has to be. And in fact, I remember, you know, with Stop the Violence Coalition, when we, you know, we were going to have groups for people who had lost family members. You know, healing groups, right? Just that opportunity to heal. And what we found was people did not want to sit in a circle and talk about their feelings. They wanted to make sure it's not happening again. That's what was therapeutic for them. They wanted to, and I mean...
That's me.
Actually, I was going to say, you know, we're going to have a whole nother hour to talk about that.
Circles. So.
Yeah, right. Right. So it's about, there's other ways of healing. There's other ways, but there's also that another part of it has to be those healing opportunities are the self-care, are the finding a way to, you know, and having an opportunity to relax and be safe and be nurtured and be comfortable in your space.
Occupy the space, but people have to learn how to occupy the space in a positive way.
Right.
So it's not learned behavior yet.
Right. 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 No,
So.
people have learned, what people have learned mostly is just sort of, you have to tough it out, make do, and tough it out is exactly, in a lot of cases.
Beyond, it's abusive at this point.
Right.
Okay, because the expectations that we have is unheard of. If I were to react in different settings the way it's expected for me to take what's coming at me, if I react in another setting towards somebody else the way that is given to me, they look at me like I was out of my mind.
Right.
You know, like children are allowed to do things that, and like it's almost like they've made it so, like walking on eggshells to reprimand your children. You don't have to beat your child. You don't have to do all of that, but you can't say this, you can't do that. You can't even tell your child what their sexuality could be, you know? And so it's like, we're talking about 5th and 6th graders, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's still molding and things like that. And it's like, it's different agendas being pushed. Mm-hmm. But over here, we're expected to just shut up, take this store back, and get through this, right? And it's not even 90 days.
Right. Right.
Okay.
No, we need to, there needs to be a community conversation about that.
It needs to be a unified, everybody's having separate this and separate that. It's good to see that everybody's unifying, but it needs to be the majority, not the broken minority. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everybody's in their own spaces. You're not reaching the masses. So how can we make a collective decision when we're all in different groups? Are those heads coming back and saying, hey, I seen you did this. Hey, I seen you did that. Let us get together from the information you got at your meeting and let's work through this. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I want to say the political will has to be there, and the political will to make it happen, because there are ways, there's the levers of government, you know, which can encourage or discourage. That's where policy comes in. So a lot of people, policy wonk, you know, it's very boring, you know, nobody wants to read it or talk about it or anything. And yet the policies that are the decisions that from which actions are encouraged or discouraged, are happening or not happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Because that means that people don't know their rights because they're not looking at the policy. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if government is really responding to the needs of the people, then the political will to do what the people need to make it advantageous for people to fill in that spot will come, right? So when a developer wants to develop a building and they find some kind of program, and there are programs that will give them tax breaks so that they can do this kind of a building, and then, you know, they might have to make some you know, adjustments to get that kind of support, but they get the support they want to do what they feel they need to do, what they feel will be so that's a policy decision. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So if there was a policy decision, we have to have more grocery stores in other places other than that tops.
Right.
Right? We have to have more grocery stores for this food desert, and they need to be in other places so that people don't have to relive that trauma.
You know what I just seen? It's more Family Dollars on Jefferson. Okay?
Right.
It's Family Dollar on William and Jefferson, Family Dollar on maybe not North, the street after North, but after Best, and then right up on Laurel. What do they think Family Dollar is doing for us?
Providing cookies and candy.
Junk.
Yeah, junk. And
waste our hard-earned money on overpriced stuff that's gonna break and keep going back in there, and no nutritional value.
Right. So back to the political will to make it inviting for private enterprise, so, it's not like we need a city grocery store, right,
No.
run by the city. So then that's why I said it's a policy thing, because the policies can be put in place that will give tax advantages. Why do we have apartment buildings and things that don't have to pay taxes? But we don't have a grocery store in a place that needs to. Why can't they get a tax break for putting, because we want to encourage what we want to encourage. That's what those policy decisions do. They will encourage or discourage things, right? So we can have that. We could have that.
Mm-hmm.
But it means that the politicians need to set things up in such a way that people will come to the forefront to do those things.
And you say like people like developers, or?
Well, a grocery store chain is what I'm talking about, or a co-op, or making it, making a deal for a co-op to come into the east side there in that two.
14208,
yeah.
14209.
Yeah.
Well, seeing as Jefferson was the thriving top neighborhood amongst our community previously, things like the food heritage,
right,
and Feed Buffalo,
right,
geared towards our specific needs,
exactly,
need to be housed on a street like Jefferson.
Right.
It reflects us, and it's geared toward our needs. And these things look like they don't even get to the table.
And the empty spaces are there. And so if the political will is there to make it a deal, to give people.
Yeah, but how do we do that? Because we can't force the hand of the government, so to speak, right?
Well, I don't know. That's what that's one of the things the Western New York Peace Center is very busy trying to do sometimes, is force the hand of the government. Is, when we call them and call them and call them, sometimes they'll pay attention, so that if they're afraid they're going to get voted out. Now, for some people, I'm afraid that could be, if the election is far enough in the distance, people are not too worried about it. But for some, it may not be that far in the distance. And so,
well, I mean, at this point, it's about having a conscience, and the fact that so many of them live within 3 to 4 blocks away. Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, you have transportation and income to go elsewhere, but what about those same senior citizens that raised you in those neighborhoods that don't have that opportunity. In our busy schedules, I could barely take care of myself sometimes as far as making sure I ate and I had enough fluid and I had 6 meals, all of that.
Right.
So you were going to make time to go back and feed our seniors too. Like, you got to think of, it's just so disheartening just to eat. This is like a massive stressor for some people.
So those are just some of the needs, you know. I mean, certainly. So we're talking about nutritional needs. We talked a little bit about transportation needs, and I'm going to say, as a person who went without a car for 5 months in Buffalo, I felt like, are you kidding me?
Well, with the price of gas going up, it's the worst time ever.
Right. So people can't afford a car, and so a third of our residents, a third of our households in Buffalo don't have a car. Mm-hmm. And so having a good public transportation system would be important. But what that means is frequency, you know, and convenience, and not all on the 9 to 5, not all, you know. I mean, when I went without a car for 5 months, and I had a lot of evening meetings and weekend events and things like that, just because of the nature of what I do. Also, it was always a different place. And I found it was terribly difficult. Very, very difficult. So after 5 months, I just couldn't hack it anymore. And I just wanted, because I had a choice. So for people who can't afford a car, they don't have a choice. So then what happens? Can you get the job you want? Maybe not. If it takes 2.5 hours to get there, right, because of the way the public
buses,
or is it not even? It may not even be possible to get there on public transportation if it's for a different shift than your regular 9 to 5, because that's the only thing that gets really service. So transportation, mental health. We talked about that and what we really need. You know, what we need in terms of respite care, in terms of healing opportunities. You know, there are some things that we can do, but some of that money that is being, you know, sort of, what can I say, offered, made available in Buffalo that we hear is coming, or that, you know,
pledged money.
Yeah, we need to see how that's going to really feed those needs. You know, and like I said, you know, there's some opportunities, you know, like we're talking about, you know, possibly even a retreat for people, you know, some opportunities to just, for people to do the self-care that we're talking about, right? But another, and last but not least, is let us really talk about dismantling white supremacy, ending white supremacy. So, you know, we have largely black leadership in Buffalo, but I don't think we've done anything towards dismantling white supremacy in Buffalo.
Well, you know, one thing that I learned at a meeting is what's the difference between being prejudiced and racist. And once you look at what's geared, what's geared in those differences, I'm prejudiced towards a lot of things. You know, I prefer not, it's a preference, right? But when you look at racism, it's them dismantling the economic system and our placement and where we're at. And when you get an understanding, of what racism is, you'll understand what they're working towards, right? And so as a community, if we're still looking at people saying racism and not knowing what racism is, we don't even know where they're coming, right?
Well, let's talk about structural racism.
Okay.
Because part of it is that racism is in the very legacy of the history that we've had. So here we've had, you know, an extremely segregated city that is also a poor city. So the poverty is concentrated in those areas
where the food desert is,
where the black people are. So it's as simple as that. And the redlining of those neighborhoods that happened at that time, that happened for many years, has resulted in people not having their homes, you know, and or not being able to even maintain the homes, and the city has not maintained those areas. So that's another thing that became very clear, especially when we were on national TV, and I know a lot of people said that it was embarrassing to them to be on national TV, for people to see the number of potholes and the sort of the almost like a war zone, you know, the devastation of the east side.
You think? And then when the people came and said, this looked the same way it did when I was here 15 years ago. What are you doing?
Right.
But does that reflect us as a people who want better? Or does it reflect our struggle of what we're not that we don't have?
Or does it reflect the structural, the political decisions that are made at the top that lead to structural differences in the way things are handled?
In a segregated city.
Right, in a segregated
So
city.
the imbalance is clearly targeting that we're the nothingness because we have nothing of all this upbuilding and development. Right. Once Jefferson is imbalanced because one side is uplifted and one side is the same, right? So the new bank is on one side, right? Northwest.
Right.
The new development is on one side of the street. So when you look from the side that Tops was on across the street, looks like it's promising going west. But when you stand in west and looking east,
right,
that's nuts.
Right.
Right? And so it's just like, I'm just like, what is it going to take? This was a major alert and an awakening. Right. And people still sleep.
Right. Well, and I think we need to mention, too, the educational system. So one of the things, the fact that, you know, somehow our kids are not getting what they need, not nearly getting what they need, and, you know, what we need to do about that. Back to, there is the structural racism again. There is the extreme segregation again. And our schools are every bit as segregated as they ever were. Well,
you know, I'm on very thin ice here because I work for the board and I therefore work for the city, so I'm kind of like tongue-tied. And trying to think of what's safe to say.
That's what Jackie Gleason would say.
You shut me up, put me...
Nothing to say, you know.
Because this isn't my personal conversation with friends. This is... So at any rate, the kids' response is people don't want to hear us. Nobody's asking us anything. When we have questions, we don't get answers. Or it's not about Black people, it's about humanity, and it's about brown people, and it's not. And so in those same settings where we want our kids to feel safe, and they're the majority in the building, what you mean we can't talk about what happened in our Black community to our Black kids, to our Black families, right?
Well, we have to.
But okay, so that's why the community is offering those spaces, right?
But the school isn't.
I don't go to every school.
Right. So
I can't speak for that.
We don't know.
Right. But the demonstration that was made by City Honors was courageous. It felt good to see that. Right. And because it's a school with probably, 20% Black kids in it? That was... It spoke volumes, right? Right. To what other schools should be able to do to support their Black kids. Right. But when I have the kids telling me and it's not even just, and you know what's so crazy? Yes, it happened to Black people. But that does not mean that the white kids understand how they're supposed to react and feel.
Right.
Because when you have white adults saying, I'm sorry, how do you think the white kids feel when they got to come back into the classroom with black kids?
Well, this is where we need to have the conversations. We need to have the open, honest conversations.
In the schools. Right.
Right.
In that setting, because we're not in those classrooms.
Right.
They have to come out of the classroom and have it in the community, and then it's leaving out the other counterparts that's in the classroom with them.
Right.
And then it's the teachers uncomfortable. So it's levels to that.
Right. Right. And especially if the teacher is white. Right?
Ones who's not willing to participate.
Right. No, we have to be. We have to be.
And so, but why is it felt that it's a preference that they have a right not to do it? Okay?
You know, I back to responding to the needs. So this is why we're talking about the needs, and the needs to talk about racism, the needs to talk about the history and the legacy and the reality of what is in our city.
Sounds great.
I mean, well, it has to be done. We need to do it.
We're waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
We are doing it, right?
We're trying to do it.
Yeah, but it has to echo, and it has to be in unity,
Right.
and it has to stop being segregation amongst those groups. We have to, the leaders need to come to the table, right?
Right.
If it was 70 black-led organizations, those 70 people need to be at the table having a conversation.
Right. Well, and also the voices of the people who are closest to the impact of the trauma.
Yes,
and
but
so,
they should be represented, right?
Right, right.
Because if you're a leader in the community, you know what your community needs, right?
Right.
And so
you
should know if you're active, if you're doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're hearing the echoes, the cries, the needs, you should be able to represent. And then you wouldn't have people saying, well, I don't feel that way, right? Because this is a door-to-door, house-to-house, person-to-person. You had, 64 families represented in that store?
Mm-hmm.
Because some of those people might not live in the 14208, 14209. You know, like I work over there, and I don't live in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
But you have people coming from all over, and now you have this spread out throughout the city. So that concentrated area, people need to go door to door and take an account for what they really need. Right. I mean, this is the census. This is time for the census.
Well, I know Open Buffalo has done a lot of work in that kind of mm-hmm. area. And actually, tomorrow I'm going to be doing some of it, but it's about March for Our Lives, which will be on Saturday the 11th, June 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be Saturday morning, 10:30, starting at Glenwood, at Jefferson at Glenwood. And then, that'll be, an opportunity for some healing and some connecting and just nurturing from the community.
Well, hopefully the co-sponsors bring the community that they know is in need.
Right.
Right? Not just show up.
Right. Well, that's what we're trying. And some of it we'll be doing more outreach, more canvassing tomorrow, and I have to make sure you have the flyer so that you can help us when you have time to help us. But I
just got to get it done.
That you, yeah. Oh, because you have 48 hours a day, right? No, it's just unbelievable. So, no, you need to take your time.
No, you're saying a poster, but we're not going to go there right now.
No, I'm just saying there's lots to do.
Right, okay.
So one of the things, back to what we need is pacing ourselves and taking care of ourselves as servants of the community.
Right, and all of us don't have staff to rotate like that.
No, right, no. None of,
and as volunteers.
Right. I don't know anything about, about that. It's a lot. It's a lot on people.
And that's why corporations that get our black money, that we spend our black dollars. Did Foot Locker come out yet?
Oh, no.
You understand?
Okay. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah. No, there's a lot.
The pressure is not applied.
The time to speak plainly is here for people's needs. So, we need to do that to Common Council, to the mayor's office. I think some of us have been trying to, about the policy decisions that need to be made to encourage the kinds of things that we need. Meanwhile, we're also trying to organize some of those things. But there's structural changes needed and deep structural changes, because the structures that exist are profoundly affected by are racist, are affected by that legacy of racism and the reality of racism.
And we keep blanketing them and keeping them covered. Okay, if it's broke, what they say, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right, but if it is
it's broken,
yeah, so we need to...
It's broke. It's been broke.
So the change has to come. The change has to come.
The table has to come to the table, right?
Right, and acknowledge. This is why, we didn't do our opening thing on values. So I want to bring it in now, because a lot of times, so in this conversation, and we're just saying what we need, what is the value that you would say we need to focus on?
The value of unity and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Because people don't treat their dogs the way our community has been treated. So, I again, because where I sit, I can't say, but it's just, people have to live like this.
So I want to bring in the values, and this is what made me think of it, because I was thinking of it, of truth and love.
Yeah.
Unarmed truth and unconditional love. And the truth is that, in our, poor, third poorest city in the country, and second poorest for our youth, for our children, second poorest, and for our sixth most segregated, and for our 12th most violent of our size city.
But with all those statistics, now what?
Well, so now how can people get involved? So I'm going to say one of the things, and that's our next piece, is really how people can get more involved. And I would say, getting involved with the Western New York Peace Center would be one thing. Calling our elected officials and telling them what we think we need. Making it very plain what you want to see them do. Would be another, and just volunteering with these different groups, including, and we're going to actually, that's a little foreshadowing that we'll be talking about how to volunteer or help with bury the violence. So bury the violence, where there's so much good that you do for the community, and the needs are so great because the violence has been structural, literal, pervasive, long-lasting, and leading to more violence because of poverty. So we just have such a lot to do. But I know you're doing it, and anyway, we are grateful. We're grateful to you. So what would you like to leave as a message on this for community needs? What would you underscore? What would you underline the most?
We need to be understood. We need the people's voice to be heard. And we need compassion.
Right. Yes, real compassion.
Right. Consider us.
Right. And insist on the changes that we need.
We insist as organizations.
Right.
Every day.
Right.
Right. Like if I'm not funded, I'm going to make funds available, right?
Well,
Right.
Right.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
so
an
hard.
insisting.
Right. Well, we will insist.
Right.
And we have to insist. And actually, that's one of the things that the Western New York Peace Center, works on, is we want to agitate for the changes that we need. And trying to be the change, too. We have to
absolutely be the
keep trying
change.
to do that. And that's what if we can all try to do that, that should be boosting us along further for all of that. So, anyway, it's a tall order, though, so, yeah. So we need to pace ourselves, but, the time is now for real change. It's way overdue. Way overdue. You've got that so right. So, well, I can't thank you enough, Kareema, for your time, for coming on the show, for talking about the needs. And we can say, there are still some people supplying. I know that World Kitchen has still been there, so they're on the later part of the day giving people meals, and there's still some counseling that's going on. Erie County has arranged for some, and there's still a possibility at the Wiley Center.
Johnny B.
Wiley.
1100.
Right.
Jefferson. And there's also, because I had information I think I sent to you.
Right. Right.
For counseling of those who are directly affected. And again, like I said, it was like 64 families represented in that store.
Right.
There is Donate One. It's a campaign of trauma therapists that are willing to provide free trauma therapy to an individual affected by the racially motivated mass shooting on Jefferson without a wait list.
Right.
Which was huge after COVID.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
that's it.
If there's anybody who could benefit from that free trauma therapy, and they can assist with the processing of the events from 514, it's WNYTRN.com.
TRN, right. WNYTRN.com. I'm looking at it too.
And it's Donate One. Donate
One. Donate One. And so it's
WNYTRN.com.
So that's another place that people can go. Well, I want to say, there's a lot of work to do. That it's going to go a lot deeper and longer than that. But thank you so much for being on the show.
I just wish
Kareema.
I could represent the people and say what I really want, but just being Kareema Morris.
Well, we're going to say some more. We're going to more to follow. So this is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was it.
Black.
What?
Fade to black.
Fade to black. Yes.